In 2011, a former landscape designer in South Carolina named Trad Cotter pulled a flush of pearl white oyster mushrooms from a 5-gallon bucket stuffed with shredded junk mail, corrugated Amazon boxes, and yesterday's coffee grounds. Total material cost, 0. Total growing time, 23 days. The mushrooms weighed over 1.5 pounds, carried the same protein density as a comparable serving of beans, and tasted like something you would pay $14 a plate for at a farm-to-table restaurant. Cotter did not use a sterile laboratory. He did not use a pressure cooker. He used a bucket, a drill bit, a bag of spawn he had propagated on cardboard, and waste that was already sitting in his recycling bin. And this was not some fringe experiment. The method traces back over 800 years to a charcoal burner in the mountains of Qingyuan, China, who noticed shiitake mushrooms erupting from axe cuts in freshly felled logs. That man, Wu Sangong, figured out that if you wounded wood and exposed it to the right conditions, fungi would colonize it and feed you. The same principle has been independently practiced on rice straw in Southeast Asia, on composted horse manure in 17th century France, and on fallen hardwood logs across Japan for centuries. And right now, sitting in your kitchen trash can, there is enough raw material to grow a week's worth of gourmet mushrooms for the cost of about $2 in spawn. Today, we are opening a method that connects an 800-year-old Chinese discovery to cutting-edge waste stream science to the pile of cardboard and coffee grounds in your kitchen right now. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to turn garbage into food, without a lab, without a degree, and without spending more than the price of a cup of coffee. The story begins in the mist-wrapped mountains of Zhejiang province, sometime around the year 1200. Wu Sangong was not a scientist. He was a charcoal burner who noticed that logs scarred during felling were sprouting clusters of fragrant mushrooms from the wounds. He began deliberately scoring fresh logs, placing them near colonized wood, and waiting. He struck the logs with a mallet after soaking them in cold water, and more mushrooms appeared. The technique became so productive that Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang of the Ming Dynasty exempted the entire Qingyuan district from mushroom taxes for 3 generations. Wu Sangong was honored with a temple that still stands beside a forest stream in those mountains. His method was the first documented system of deliberate mushroom cultivation on organic waste, and it worked because he understood what took Western science another 6 centuries to articulate. Fungi do not need rich soil. They need dead organic matter and time. Meanwhile, Japanese cultivators refined Wu's discovery through the Edo period, selecting specific shiitake strains and managing humidity to optimize yields. In Southeast Asia, paddy straw mushrooms were cultivated on heaped rice straw, agricultural waste so abundant it was otherwise burned. In 17th century France, Parisian gardeners discovered button mushrooms colonizing composted horse manure in their melon beds and moved the operation into limestone caves. By the 19th century, British growers found that oyster mushrooms could colonize straw with almost no preparation. 5 civilizations, 5 centuries apart, all arriving at the same molecular truth. Fungi are the planet's original recyclers, and they will convert nearly any carbon-rich organic waste into edible protein if you give them the chance. This is not folklore. This is convergent biology, the same decomposition chemistry discovered independently through observation, necessity, and generational wisdom. So, what is actually happening inside that bucket of shredded cardboard? Fungi are heterotrophs. Unlike plants, they cannot photosynthesize. They feed by secreting enzymes, primarily cellulases, hemicellulases, and lacases, into their surrounding environment. These enzymes break down complex polymers like cellulose and lignin into simple sugars the mycelium can absorb. Cellulose is the most abundant organic polymer on Earth. It is the structural backbone of every piece of paper, every cardboard box, every cotton shirt, and every coffee filter you have ever thrown away. When you place oyster mushroom spawn onto damp corrugated cardboard, the mycelium immediately recognizes the cellulose fibers as food. It threads through the corrugated channels, those tiny air pockets between the layers, using them as highways for gas exchange. The fluting of corrugated cardboard is, by accident of industrial design, nearly perfectly engineered for mycelial colonization. Coffee grounds add a second dimension. They are rich in nitrogen, roughly 2% by dry weight, along with potassium, magnesium, and phosphorus. For fungi, nitrogen is the rate-limiting nutrient. Cellulose provides the carbon energy. Nitrogen provides the building blocks for proteins and enzymes. A substrate combining high-carbon cardboard with nitrogen-rich coffee grounds creates a nutritional profile remarkably close to optimized commercial formulas. Researchers at the Politecnico di Torino, working with Lavazza, demonstrated that spent coffee grounds supported robust colonization by Pleurotus austriatus and could be integrated into a closed-loop system where post-harvest substrate was fed to vermicomposting worms. A study in the journal Helion found that mixing up to 20% spent coffee grounds into a base substrate had no significant negative effect on the nutritional composition of the harvested mushrooms. The brewing process itself pasteurizes the grounds. Water at 90 to 96 degrees Celsius kills most competing bacteria and mold spores, which means fresh grounds require no additional sterilization. Let that sink in for a moment. The most energy-intensive, equipment-heavy step in commercial mushroom farming, substrate sterilization, is already done for you every single morning by your coffee maker. This is not a laboratory curiosity. GrowCycle, an urban mushroom farm founded in Exeter, England in 2013, built its entire commercial operation around spent coffee grounds collected from local cafes, demonstrating that a single cafe produces enough waste in a week to yield several kilograms of fresh oyster mushrooms. In Paris, a French healthcare organization launched a project growing mushrooms on spent coffee grounds that ended up served in Michelin-starred restaurants. The University of Illinois initiated the mycocycling project, finding that coffee grounds alone were viable substrate for lion's mane and reishi. In Sardinia, Italian companies began collecting spent grounds from cafes, cultivating fungi in Tuscany, and selling the results to gourmet restaurants, turning a municipal waste problem into a regional food supply. And this works beyond coffee. Oyster mushrooms have been successfully cultivated on straw, sawdust, newspaper, cotton waste, and even old denim jeans. Trad Cotter, the microbiologist who founded Mushroom Mountain, spent over 20 years documenting cultivation on dozens of waste substrates. His 2014 book documented techniques for perpetuating spawn on cardboard alone. No electricity, no autoclave, no laboratory. The commercial mushroom industry knows all of this. The global mushroom market was valued at over $65 billion in 2024 and is projected to exceed $140 billion by 2033. The substrate market alone reached nearly $2.8 billion. This is an industry built on the industrial scale version of the exact same biological process that happens when you stuff coffee grounds and cardboard into a bucket. The difference is not chemistry. The difference is packaging. You cannot patent cellulose decomposition. You cannot patent the enzymatic activity of Pleurotus austriatus. You cannot build a subscription model around a fungus that has been colonizing dead wood for 300 million years. And you certainly cannot justify a $30 mushroom growing kit when the active biological process requires materials that cost less than $1. The answer to why most people do not know this is not a conspiracy. It is something more ordinary and honestly more frustrating: economics. The commercial mushroom industry operates on centralized production, controlled environments, proprietary substrate formulations, cold chain logistics, and retail markup. Every step adds cost. Every step adds a reason for the system to continue exactly as it is. When you buy a clamshell of oyster mushrooms at the grocery store for $6 or $7, you're paying for climate-controlled growing rooms, refrigerated trucks, and shelf space. You are not paying for complexity in the biology. The biology is simple. You are paying for complexity in the supply chain. And then there are the growing kits, the Instagram-ready boxes that promise the joy of home cultivation for $25 to $40. Inside is a bag of pre-colonized substrate that cost the manufacturer a few dollars to produce. The spawn is standard commercial grain spawn. The substrate is pasteurized straw or supplemented sawdust. The markup is extraordinary, and the marketing message is carefully calibrated. Growing mushrooms is presented as a novelty, a gift, a weekend project, never as a practical food production skill that anyone can replicate indefinitely for nearly free. Search for how to grow mushrooms online, and the first page is dominated by companies selling kits, courses, and equipment. The free Low-tech methods are buried under layers of sponsored content and affiliate links. This is not because the information does not exist. It is because no one profits from you knowing it. You cannot run a Facebook ad for a technique that requires a bucket and yesterday's newspaper. You cannot build a recurring revenue stream around a process that, once learned, never requires another purchase. The economic incentive is not to suppress this knowledge through some deliberate act. The incentive is simply to never amplify it. To be fair, commercial production has real advantages. Industrial operations achieve biological efficiencies and yields that DIY methods cannot match. The consistency, food safety protocols, and year-round availability of store-bought mushrooms serve a genuine purpose. If you need 100 pounds of shiitake for a restaurant next Tuesday, you are not growing that in a bucket. But for the home grower, for the person who wants fresh oyster mushrooms on their Tuesday stir-fry, who has coffee grounds and cardboard heading to the recycling bin, the commercial supply chain is solving a problem you do not have, and it is charging you handsomely for the service. Here is the method. It is simple enough that a child can do it, and effective enough that commercial operations have been built on the same principle. You will need 4 things: spent coffee grounds collected within 24 hours of brewing, corrugated cardboard torn into strips roughly 2 to 3 inches wide, oyster mushroom grain or sawdust spawn, available online for $10 to $15, enough for multiple batches, and a clean container. A 1-gallon plastic tub with a lid works. A 5-gallon bucket with 1/4-inch holes drilled in the sides works even better for larger batches. Step 1. Soak your cardboard strips in water for 1 to 2 days. This hydrates the cellulose and makes it pliable. Step 2. Wipe the inside of your container with rubbing alcohol, 70% isopropyl. This reduces competing organisms. Step 3. Layer the materials like a lasagna. Start with 2 to 3 layers of damp cardboard on the bottom. Sprinkle a thin layer of spawn. You need roughly 10 to 15% spawn by weight of total substrate. Add a thin layer of fresh coffee grounds, no more than 1 to 2 centimeters deep. Repeat. Cardboard, spawn, coffee, cardboard, spawn, coffee. Fill the container to near the top. Finish with a layer of cardboard. Step 4. Close the lid loosely. You want air exchange but moisture retention. Place the container in a warm spot, 20 to 24 degrees Celsius out of direct sunlight. A kitchen counter, a garage shelf, a closet. All fine. Within 3 to 5 days, you will see white thread-like growth spreading through the layers. That is mycelium. It is alive. It is feeding. And it is converting your garbage into mushroom tissue. Do not disturb it. Within 2 to 3 weeks, the entire container should be colonized, a solid mass of white. Step 5. Once fully colonized, move the container to a spot with indirect natural light or fluorescent light. Open the lid or cut small slits in the sides of the container. Mist the surface lightly with water once or twice a day. Within 5 to 10 days, you will see small pin-like formations pushing through. These are primordia. Baby mushrooms. They will double in size daily. Step 6. Harvest when the caps begin to flatten and before the edges curl upward. Twist and pull gently. You should get 200 to 400 grams from a 1-gallon container on the first flush. After harvesting, soak the substrate block in water overnight, then resume misting. A second flush will appear in 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes a third. Total cost for the first batch, roughly $2 to $3 in spawn per container, plus materials that were destined for the landfill. A comparable amount of fresh oyster mushrooms at a grocery store costs $8 to $14. After your first harvest, you can use a portion of the colonized substrate as spawn for your next batch, tearing off chunks of mycelium-covered cardboard and layering them into fresh material. At that point, your ongoing cost drops to zero. The spent substrate after it finishes producing is not waste either. It is living compost colonized with beneficial fungi. Mix it into garden soil or add it to a vermicomposting bin. Worms thrive on it. The cycle closes completely. Waste becomes food, becomes soil amendment. 800 years ago, a charcoal burner in Zhejiang noticed mushrooms growing from wounds in felled timber. Japanese monks refined the technique across centuries. French gardeners discovered it beneath Paris. And right now, in kitchens and garages and apartment closets on every continent, people are rediscovering what all of them already knew. Fungi do not need your money. They need your waste. The most sophisticated food production technology on Earth has been running for 300 million years, and it asks for nothing but what you are already throwing away. Every share puts a crack in the wall built around knowledge that was never anyone's to lock away. If this changed how you think about your trash can, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what we uncover next. Every like tells the algorithm this matters more than another ad. Stay curious, stay self-reliant. I will see you in the next one.